Hey guys, welcome back. So today I brought home not one, but two Generac GP6500Es. These are both electric start and fairly low hours. I think one of them has 7 hours on it and the other one less than 200. With that said, neither works. Both have engine problems. And assuming the engines come back, I think there's a lot of other things to deal with here. I mean, both batteries are dead. Both are missing wheels, handles. The rollover valve here is broken. And this one's missing the air filter and air box. So yeah, there's a few things going on here, but I think most importantly, we need to find out if either of these engines still work. This one has low compression, I'm told, and this engine is stuck. So I'm going to get the wheels on these, probably roll this one out of the way. And for this video, I'm going to focus in on this guy. I also want to take a second and thank Ken from Ken's Small Engine. He's the one who found this listing and passed it on to me. So thanks, Ken. I appreciate that. So let me get you set up a little better and get going. Okay, well, it's a lot better than no wheels at all. The ones here actually are the right size. They're about a 10-inch wheel, but the shaft of that wheel is too large. So those wheels are on there kind of sloppy. They're pretty dry rot as well, so not a permanent solution. And then over here, it's even worse. These are 8-inch wheels meant for a generator, half this size. So they don't stand much of a chance, but it'll be good enough to test with. Now, I was getting ready to drain the tanks. I pulled the caps off of both of these and do see an issue. This one's not too bad, actually. There's a bit of rust, but not too bad. This one, on the other hand, might be a different story. I can't even see the bottom of that tank. The fuel is just really bad. So I was going to drain the tanks, but there's really no point in doing that now. There is a fuel screen or filter right at the top here in the petcock inside the tank. And that's just going to trap everything in there. So these tanks have to come off anyway to be cleaned. That petcock has to be removed, tanks cleaned, derusted. I don't even know if these are going to work. So just going to get them out of the way. We'll come back to those later. Got both the tanks off, and I was going to roll this one out of the way, the one here on the left. But I just pulled that starter rope, and it feels like it has compression. So I'm not sure what the seller was talking about and trying to demonstrate to me, but it feels pretty good, actually. So I'm going to spray a little bit of starting fluid into the carb and give that cord a pull, see if we get anything from that engine. Ow. Maybe a timing issue. I just broke that. This broke and it kind of kicked back. I'm going to try it again. Maybe with better gloves this time. it wants to start. Very nice. I'd say that's, we got a good engine. Not sure why it kicked back, but maybe I didn't pull it fast enough. Let's get this one out of the way and check why the other one's stuck. I'm gonna get that spark plug out. Potentially it's hydrolocked. That spark plug is brand new. Huh. It's turning, but I don't see really any signs of it being hydrolocked. Yet, it's turning. Very interesting. Let me get that plug back in, see if it keeps turning. Okay, well, it's not getting stuck, but it is very hard to turn over. You know, the compression's very high. I have a feeling either the compression release isn't working or maybe the valves need to be adjusted. So when I get the compression tester in there, I want to see what the compression's at. Okay, let's give this a try. Usually these come in at around 60 psi. I'm suspecting it's going to be way over that. Okay, well there's our problem. We have excellent compression. The engine's not stuck, but the compression release is definitely not working. We're at 135? No, 140 psi. That's more than double what it should be. So let's get the valve cover off and hope it's just a simple adjustment. Okay, compression tester's removed. I'm just going to find top dead center using the screwdriver on the compression stroke. So the intake valve's open. And this is the compression stroke. And we're at the top. And there's a ton of clearance on the exhaust. So that's probably it. The compression release is on the exhaust side. And I mean, I don't know what that clearance is, but I'd say it's something like 30 thousandths. It should probably be closer to 6. So let me get the feeler gauges out. We'll see where it's at now and close it up some. Okay, we'll give this one a try. It is 25 thousandths. And it fits in there with just actually no drag whatsoever. Let's try adding another. Okay, so now I got an 18 and a 17. So that brings it up to 35 thousandths. And it fits. It's still kind of loose. So it's probably closer to 40 thousandths. I'm not really sure why this is so out of adjustment. I mean, the adjustment screw is tight. I still see the rotator cap on there. You know, I'd say maybe the valve isn't closing all the way, but the compression test was really high. So I think the valve is closed. Not really sure what else would cause that. So let me crack this loose. We'll adjust this for now to 5 thousandths and just do another compression test. I'm going to set it to 6 actually. Okay, let's try that compression test again. Beautiful. It's like 60. Perfect. You know what's next? Let's get the plug in, see if it'll run. Yeah, I guess I'll put the valve cover back on. I don't want to make a mess. You know, I don't know if this is correct. I set it at 6. Chances are it is. But I'm not going to torque the cover down because most likely I'm going to have to go back in here anyway. Yeah, it's low. Glad I checked it. Let me throw some in there. Yeah, it's better. Closer to full. That's fine. I'm not going to add any more. I'm just going to change it anyway. Assuming it starts. Nice. 2 for 2. So we now just have to clean these carbs, and these things should run on their own. I'm going to hold off a second on pulling these carbs. This generator here, the one that kicked back on me, I think is suffering from the same problem. of high compression. Now that this one's been adjusted over here, I can tell this one, it's much harder to pull over than it should be. So I'm going to get the compression tester on it, just kind of validate that. Also, I have looked up the specs on these valves. It's actually 8 thousandths on the exhaust and 6 on the intake. So I've already made the correction over there and torqued that valve cover back on at about 40 inch-pounds. So I'm going to repeat the process over here. It's a lot of compression. So not quite as bad as the other one, but it is bad. We're at 120 PSI. It should be 60. So yeah, valves need to be adjusted. It looks really clean in here. So I'm guessing this is the one that supposedly has 7 hours on it. It looks unused. I'm on top dead center again of the compression stroke. This is the exhaust valve. And you can see, I mean, that gap is huge. It's about the same as the other, 35, 40 thousandths, maybe more. You know, the rotator cap is still there, somehow. So I'm going to make the same adjustments here. We'll put this thing back together, and then we'll clean up the carbs. That feels pretty good. I'll just double check the intake. It should be 6 thousandths, and it is. So just like the other machine, the intake was fine, not so much on the exhaust. Anyway, I'm just going to tighten this down a little bit better. Maybe rotate the engine once. I'll double check the clearance, but I think we should be good now. Yeah, that's fine. Beautiful. We're at 61, maybe 62 PSI. And that's where we should be. It's much easier to pull over now. I'm not going to break my hand. I realized I kind of glossed over why adjusting the valves made such a big difference on the compression release. And the reason for that is when the engine's spinning slow, like when you're pulling it over by hand, there's a compression release mechanism which kind of bumps usually the exhaust valve open just a bit to let some of that compression out. And then once the engine starts up, that compression release mechanism kind of moves out of the way and you have full compression at that point. But what was happening is that because the clearance was so big, so large on the exhaust side, is that that little bump of the exhaust valve wasn't making it, meaning, the push rod was giving the valve a little bump, but the rocker never contacted the valve to move it because it was too far away. So by decreasing the clearance, the compression release can now let a little bit of pressure out, making this thing a whole heck of a lot easier and safer to start. So I spilled a lot of that fuel on the ground before I decided to catch it, but I could see water in what came out, and even what I caught with the cup, hopefully that focuses, but you can see that line down there. It's actually not too deep. I would say it's 70% water in this cup. So that alone would have kept this machine from starting. Maybe the carb isn't too bad. In this one, we got green gas. No water, no debris. It smells pretty bad, though. Okay, time to place your bets. The one on the right had the green fuel that smelled like paint thinner, and the one on the left had the water and all the debris. I think they're both going to be clogged, but not too bad. This one I think will be a bit better. Not bad. Okay, that was wrong. The green one's worse, but Guess the question is how much worse? The needle seems to be stuck. Otherwise, it's not too bad. That should clean up. Yeah, and this one's fine. Okay, well, the one that was full of water does not have a clogged jet. So it probably would have run. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything major here. I mean, there's a little bit of buildup, but nothing major. So this carburetor actually is in pretty good shape now that it has no water in it. This one, yeah, not so sure about. This needle might be shot. Maybe. That might work. Nope. We'll try that again later. Anyway, I'm just going to run through all the openings here. Make sure everything's unclogged. I'll run through that main jet just in case I can't get it out. At least we'll get some fuel through it and actually some degreaser, so that'll help free things up. This here is not a jet, but the fuel does go in through the bottom and then goes up to the main jet. So this has to be clean also. Gonna wash these one at a time. Yeah, not too bad. All the green is gone. The seat's still a mess. Gonna try to get this jet out now, see if it'll come out. Okay, and they're out. So, good. We'll run this through a few more times and probably clean the seat up. Stuff cleaned up pretty well. This is the one over here that was the bad one that was all green. And there's still hints of green. I think this bowl seal, it's pretty bad. But overall, it came back better than I thought. So I was kind of worried that this wasn't going to come apart nicely and not be viable. But I'd say in the condition it's in now, it'll run. I guess the big question is, will the needle and seat play nice? And yeah, this seal, I'll run with it for now, but I might have to come up with something better for that. This is the idle screw right here. And this generator doesn't idle, so you don't want to make the mistake of driving this in too far. You don't want it influencing the throttle at all. The only purpose of it really in this application is just to hold down the pilot jet. Yeah, surprisingly, the needle and seat are playing nice. So this thing should run and not flood everywhere. Okay, that's pretty much it. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'll turn you back on in a second. We'll get these on the machines. was passing Harbor Freight today, and I couldn't help myself. I stopped, got some wheels that are much better than the wheels that I have on there now. And these are only $7 each. Not too bad. I think the only downside is it's a 5/8 inch shaft. This needs a 1/2 inch. So I also picked up some 1/2 inch bolts and some spacers. So this should give us what we need to get some good tires on this thing. And as far as this missing handle goes, I took a look online. It's not available, discontinued. So, not a big deal. I think I have an alternative. I actually picked up these handles for another project, which I never ended up using. But these are supposed to go on the side rails like that. In this case, the Generac expects it in the middle here. And I think it'll fit, which is perfect, because then we have one for each generator. As much as I want to bring these outside and try them, I can't. It's the middle of the night, not really an option, so that'll have to wait till the morning. For now, I'm going to move on to the tanks. I'm going to get the gas out of both tanks, get evaporust into the tank, the better of the two tanks, let that soak for a few days, and then start working on the bad one. Well, this is the worst of the two tanks. Now that the fuel's out of it, yeah, I'm not too concerned. It's just surface rust. That'll come off pretty easily. And this one was the better of the two. And you can see, not too bad. So, yeah, it won't be a big deal. You know, I'd still say it's probably at least a day soaking in evaporust for this one. And probably 2 or 3 days for this one. Okay, I've got both generators here set up on either side of the heaters. And I'm going to use a 30 amp breakout cord to power the heaters and the 120 volt outlets to power the kilowatt. I've got the temporary tank hooked up. Gonna get this one started, make sure it runs well and makes power, and then we'll move on and check the other. "122 volts, 60 hertz. Gonna speed that up a little bit. Yeah, not too bad. 123 volts, almost 59 hertz, and no more backfiring. Not too bad. It started right up. We've got power output. The engine speed, I bumped it up a bit. So things sound pretty decent. I think the only thing that surprised me is that we are getting a pop once in a while through the intake. So the valves might need to be adjusted, potentially lapped. The interesting thing is once I put even a light load, like a 1,000-watt load on it, that completely goes away. So yeah, I'd kind of expect it to happen regardless of the load. So I'm going to give that one some thought. Let's give this one a try. "122 volts, 60.6 hertz. Not too bad. I'm going to bump it up a little bit more to 61. "125 volts, 59.1. It's good. The engine started right up. It sounded good, handled the load, no issue. And this one sounds good. There's no backfiring or popping, but I can tell we still have a bit of work. The carburetor's flooding over, so that's okay. That's a pretty easy thing to fix. I'm going to get this back inside, both of them back in. I'm just going to get the oil out, get it changed while it's hot. We'll dig in a bit more on why that one's popping. There are a lot of reasons for a carburetor to be backfiring like this one is. It could be timing related, it could be ignition related, it could be the valves, or carburation. And I'm leaning towards carburation in this case because a couple reasons. It doesn't backfire when the engine's cold. It took about a minute before it started. And timing and ignition, I don't think would be impacted by that, or the valves for that matter. And I think the thing that seals the deal is the fact that when I apply a light load to the engine, the backfiring stops. The generator hasn't really changed speed. The biggest difference is that the carburetor is now letting more fuel in to support the load. So I'm going to get this carburetor off, put the leaky one on, probably swap the needle when I'm at it, and we'll give this thing another try. As you can see, it is starting to snow. I'm going to make this a quick test. I did add the air box, the air filter, just to keep the engine from sucking up the snow. And I did swap out the needle. So this is the leaky carb that's on here now, and it is not leaking. So we'll add a new needle to the shopping list. So as you can see, it's not a carb issue. It's not running too lean. So I'm going to check the valves next. I think we can safely rule out the carburetor based on the testing that was just done. So that only leaves valves, timing, and ignition. And as you can probably see, I pulled the valve cover off again. I double checked the valves and they're dead on. 8 thousandths on the exhaust, 6 on the intake. The valves too, as far as I can tell, they are seating. We are getting good compression, minimal leak down, and I don't think they're sticking. So I'm leaning towards it not being a valve issue. So we're left with timing and ignition, and I think I did find an issue with the ignition side of things. So I actually found 2 issues. First one being this is an NGK part number, but it is not an NGK plug. So that could be causing an issue. This plug is or was brand new. I just double checked the gap here and the gap is wrong. It's currently set to 18 thousandths. It should be 30 thousandths. So that's going to cause a pretty weak spark, low voltage, a cool spark, whatever you want to call it, but it's going to have trouble igniting the fuel properly. And that kind of makes sense because the way this engine works, it actually sparks twice, meaning it sparks once on the compression stroke when it's at top dead center. It also sparks again at the end of the exhaust stroke when it's switching to the intake stroke. And at that point, both valves are open. And if there's unburned fuel due to a miss on the plug, and it could ignite at that point, sending a pup out of the intake. So could it be that easy? Probably not. But I do have an NGK that is properly gapped, not new, but I'm willing to bet it'll work better than this. So I'm going to put that in. I'm also going to pull the blower housing off. I just want to validate kind of the condition of the coil and also the timing. Got the engine at top dead center, and what I was looking to check was the position of this magnet. If things are timed properly, this magnet should just be clearing the coil, which it is, so I think timing is good. Also, the gap between the coil and the flywheel seems to be good as well. And since I was in here, I thought I'd check the ohms on the coil, and that has me a bit more concerned. We're at 10.3 thousand ohms. Now, I don't know what the value should be on this. On a Honda GX390, normal range is between 6,000 and 7,000 ohms. So it seems like this coil could be bad, but to be fair, it should also be isolated. It should be removed from the engine and tested separately. But for now, I'm just going to test it with the new plug. Don't want to change too many things at once. And if it still is acting up, we'll try a new coil. This is the plug here. I'm going to try. As you can see, not new, far from, but it is a good plug and it is gapped properly. And this is the plug from the other generator, the one that's running well. Just double checking the gap here. And it's a touch under, but it is a lot closer to 30 thousandths than the one I pulled out of this machine. So I'll adjust this one too and just put it back in the good machine. Okay, let's see if there's any change in how this runs. It is running much better now. It did pop once, but over the course of about 4 minutes, that was it. So it's a big improvement. Still not perfect. I think we're lean on that carb. It's hunting, and it's just not enough fuel in there. When I give it a little bit of choke, the engine actually speeds up, the throttle closes a bit, and the hunting goes away. So that pilot jet most likely needs to be drilled out. So we'll get it back inside and finish this thing up. You don't actually need to get the carb off the machine to get the pilot jet out. So easy enough to do, but something still doesn't quite make sense here. This carb is the one from the other machine that ran fine on that machine. On this one, it's still pumping. Now, when I did do the carb swap, I also swapped the gasket between the insulator and the carb just to rule that out. So the one thing I didn't check was the condition of the insulator itself, as well as the gasket on the other side. So I'm just going to take this off again. We'll double check we don't have any issues here, and then I'll proceed to drill that jet out. Yeah, the insulator itself looks to be in good shape. There's no cracks. So the gasket actually stayed on the machine, so I'll show you that real quick, but that also looks good. And there's a view of the gasket in question. It looks fine. I'm not concerned about that. And these do and can break off in these jets, so try to go easy. Before you do this, make sure you can get a replacement jet if you do in fact break the bit inside of it. Yep, we're through. Okay, that's pretty much it. It's at 16 thousandths. Hopefully that's not too much. So I've got all the parts I need to put these machines together and make them complete. I've got 2 new batteries, a rollover valve, a new needle, and a new Generac airbox. Also, I had to get 1 new fuel petcock for a couple reasons. The filter on one of them was completely destroyed, and the fuel valve itself didn't work. So we'll get that installed. As far as the tanks themselves go, they both cleaned up pretty well. The better of the 2 tanks took about 48 hours to clean up. And surprisingly, the worse of the 2 tanks only took 36 hours to clean up. And I think it cleaned up better than the tank that looked better to start with. So there's nothing holding me back. I think I have everything I need to put both of these machines completely together, make them 100%, and then we'll bring them both outside and make sure that everything's working well together. And just to make it clear, this needle here actually isn't specifically for the Generac. This is just a replacement needle for a GX390, a Honda. And this is what this is a clone of. Very similar size engine. This needle should work just fine. And these are the two side by side. So seems to be the same part. Yeah, not too much left of this filter. You know, even if the valve worked, I don't think you can get replacements for this. And even if you can, you know, how much is that? And here's the new. So I just did the same thing to this generator on the left as the one on the right. They both have new batteries. Their tanks are reinstalled and connected. I think the only difference is that the one here on the left needed a new fuel valve, so that's installed and done. And the one remaining item is the fuel rollover valve on the top. Yes, I don't know if there's any easy way to uninstall this, but there is a lip here that holds it in. It's not much, a couple thousandths all the way around. So the important thing is, I guess, trying to get this old one out is just not to damage the tank. Then this one should just push right into place. Well, I found the broken piece. It's actually still in here. I don't want to cut it too short because then it's not going to reach. So I'm going to try to get that piece out of there and save this line. I think that's it. Both of these are back together as far as I know. All the issues have been addressed. The one minor thing left is really just painting up that recoil black instead of red. But it's way too cold. Can't do that right now, so that's going to have to wait. For now, I do want to get it outside, make sure that this jet, now that it's drilled out, is running this engine better. Also, that this needle is functioning the way that it should. Change of plan. I've been warming the garage up a bit, and I think it is warm enough to get paint on that recoil. So I'm going to pull that off right now. We'll paint it up, and then get it outside. Okay, it's a much nicer day out today. I am going to try both of these again. Let's see, the one that was popping out of the exhaust is this one. So that one I need to run at least for a few minutes to see if it's going to do it again. This one here is the one with the new needle. I know the needle's working, but I actually haven't tried the carb on this machine. That carb was originally over there. So I'm going to start with this one. We'll just get it started, put a light load on it, make sure we're good, and then we'll move on to the one with the drilled out pilot jet. Sounds a little fast. It's a little bit fast. I'm going to slow it down. Yeah, 56.8 hertz. That's no good. Well, there's good news and there's bad. I guess we'll start with the good. The generator here on the left continues to run well. I'd say that one is done. The one here on the right, it's no longer popping, but I put a 1500 watt load on it, then I took that load off, and it sounded like the engine was running fast. So I double checked, and it was a little bit over 63 hertz. So I adjusted that down to 61.5, and then loaded it to 3000 watts, and the engine speed dropped way too much. It was at, I think, 56.8 hertz, and this is supposed to be a 6500 watt continuous generator. So that wasn't even a half load, and it was doing pretty poorly. So I didn't notice that issue earlier before I drilled out that jet, so I think I may have overshot a bit. I do have another jet that I have not drilled out, so I'm going to put that one in. We'll try restarting it and see if things are any better. Okay, I pulled the drilled jet out. I put a standard one in. It is a clone jet, but let's give it a try. Okay, now we're starting slow. Alright, we're at 61 hertz. Yeah, around 59. Yeah, that's more like it. I adjusted the engine speed back to around 61. I think it was around 61, maybe 61.2. Loaded it to 3000 watts, and we lost about 2 hertz in engine speed, and that's pretty typical for a 3000 watt load. Usually it's around 2 hertz, maybe 2.5 hertz is pretty normal. So things are going better now. I did hear it pop once, now that we have kind of the original jet back in. But I think I'm kind of splitting hairs at this point. I am kind of curious, though, how this will do under a 6000 watt load. So I'm going to get a few more space heaters out here, and we'll put it to the test. All right, let's give this another try. I have a 6000 watt load here. I mean, technically, it's actually probably closer to 6200 watts, maybe 63. So this will be a very good test. I'm hopeful that it stays above 58 hertz, but under this kind of load, I'd be happy with anywhere above 57 hertz. 9.6. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, good. It did just fine under a full load. We held at about 57.5 hertz. And you got to remember too, before loading this up, we were only at about 61 hertz. So that unloaded speed could be bumped up a little bit more to 62. And then there'd be no issue maintaining 58 hertz when under a full load. But I'm pretty happy with the way things are at, given where we started with this thing. Now, before starting it the last time, I did pull the pilot jet out again. It didn't feel quite right when I installed it, meaning when I put it in the carb and pushed it down, when I let go, it kind of sprung back out a little bit of the carburetor. So I ended up basically just rotating it 180 degrees, put it back in, and it seated in place. It didn't spring back. So I think that most likely was just an intake leak due to the way this jet was installed, and that's why it was lean, and that's why it was popping. So this one is now running well. We have two good generators from what was supposed to be one with a stuck engine and the other with no compression. So yeah, far from it. These things are in pretty good shape. So I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching.